Breaking news for the Texans as a blockbuster trade is in play. All-pro tackle Laremy Tunsil is headed to the Washington Commanders. We'll break down why this is actually a good thing for the Texans. I know a lot of people are a little frustrated that they traded our left tackle, the blind side, the corner piece of the offensive line, to the Commanders. But this is actually good news because of how much money was invested in the offensive line last season. And I actually predicted the Texans to think about this about a month ago, and now everything's in play. Nick Caserio is shaking things up, and free agency has started. If you haven't subbed to the channel, please do. Only 5% of you watching are subscribed, and honestly, it would mean the world to me. I appreciate everyone commenting, all the support. Let me know your thoughts on the Tunsil trade, but back to business. Tunsil has been traded, and honestly, I'm going to flash back to my clip about a month ago. At the time, the Texans had like $5 million in cap space, so honestly, I was thinking about all the possibilities of what might happen, and Tunsil being traded, I thought made sense to me. If I was the GM, I would be like, Tunsil is 30, he's only getting older. Let me play the clip for you guys. I am all in on, hey, let's get rid of Laremy Tunsil, let's get rid of Titus Howard, void Stephon Diggs' contract, cut Shaq Mason, because this offensive line was so bad last year when you were paying most of the guys on your team so much money. This was supposed to be a decent offensive line, and Stroud gets sacked 8 times in the playoffs versus the Chiefs. As far as the trade details, it gets a little bit tricky, but the Texans are basically getting a second this year and a third next year for Laremy Tunsil, and it's not the best trade. I thought originally that it was a second, third, and a fourth, but the fourth doesn't even matter because the Texans are swapping fourths, and they're basically getting a second and then a third next year, which isn't terrible. I would have rathered a second and a fourth this year, or a first rounder next year, or first rounder in general, but they do get an extra second round pick, so it's not terrible, but definitely could be better. Laremy Tunsil is only getting older. He's 31 at the start of this season. His contract was very big. And for a guy who's supposed to be an all-pro tackle, who had 20 holds last year, 19 penalties, yeah, second in allowed sacks, probably because he's holding everyone, or jumping the snap, or pulling a Jawan Taylor on the Kansas City Chiefs. I am so happy Laremy Tunsil is off of the Houston Texans. Yes, he was a dominant left tackle. Yes, he was a great blindside guy. But this is the biggest move the Texans could have done to, one, make cap space, but two, go after a guard and have Titus Howard move to the left tackle position, play the blind spot, because we all know he can move from tackle to guard, back to left tackle, and you can go get two solid, big-time guards to play the middle. Last year, the Texans invested so much money into this offensive line between Laremy Tunsil, Shaq Mason, Titus Howard, and they completely fell apart. Shaq Mason allowed double-digit sacks last year. We talked about it, but it's like ridiculous. And why not cut everything off and just restart? Why not? What's the worst thing that could happen, especially when you're paying a guy $27 million to play left tackle, and all he does is false start and hold? Are we serious? We're going to pay a guy that much money to protect our quarterback? Yes, he was second in sacks, but that's not everything it is about a football game. Football's a team sport, and if you're costing your team 19 freaking penalties, that's terrible. Seriously, man. I mean, I'm screaming at the TV watching the Texans game last year, like, what are you doing? It's so frustrating. My point is, the Texans' offensive line was bad last year. So what's the difference if you trade a guy who, yes, he didn't have the most sacks, but he had the holding penalties, and the big number was the money. The money that they cannot have. You can't pay everybody. Derek Stingley, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson. Everybody's got to get paid in the coming years, so you got to get rid of some cap space, invest in those guard positions, draft a right tackle, and have Blake Fisher substitute in. There's a lot to do for the Texans, but before the season started, it was very blurry on what they were actually going to do. I was actually like, okay, we might not make any moves because I don't know if Caserio is aggressive enough to do anything. And then he just trades Tunsil. He trades for Kirk. He goes out and get Berrios, who we'll talk about. But the Texans are not done. They're only getting started. They're only making more cap space, and this is a great, great trade. People, I want you to, everyone in the comments, let me know if this is a good trade, bad trade. Honestly, great. Give it an A, B, C, something in the range, because I think this is a A- trade for the Texans. You get a second, third, a fourth round pick for Laremy Tunsil. For a guy who's 30 years old, we don't know how much gas is left in the tank. This is a great trade. And now that second round pick can probably be used on maybe a secondary position, maybe a running back. Like now you have 2 second round picks, 2 third round picks, 2 fourth round picks. Like that's perfect, especially for this year. That's incredible. So Laremy Tunsil to the Texans is definitely a lot to touch on. And I'll get to kind of the people that are like, why are we doing this? To move a player of Tunsil's caliber tells you a few things. DeMeco has preached about wiring this offensive line. To trade Tunsil and leave potential hole at left tackle should tell you something. Also, there's financial ramifications coming and resetting contract at left tackle. Look it up. Here's the thing. I do agree there is a hole at left tackle, but I also don't mind moving Titus Howard, I said it, to left tackle. Here's the thing. DeMeco's preached about the O-line. I don't think Tunsil is a very good voice. Yes, he's a captain. I haven't really seen him kind of get his guys riled up. I don't know if it's just me personally, but I haven't seen him be the leader that he's supposed to be as a 30-year-old veteran and playing the left tackle position. He doesn't really take it. This is just me personally. Watching Tunsil play, it just looks like he's playing for his own self, his own sake. I could be wrong. I don't actually know anything. Just looking at the body language, I would love to hear people's opinions because I'm looking at everything, and a lot of people are saying that this hurts the Texans' offensive line drastically, and I disagree. This does not hurt it drastically. Yes, it's a little bit of a hole, but you have now 3 draft picks to work with through the middle rounds that you can play around with the tackle and guard position. So if the Texans do not sign a guard like James Daniels or Kevin Zeitler or Will Fry, I will be a little disappointed that we even traded Tunsil. But I think it's a good idea because his contract is huge. He's still got 2 years left this year and next year, and you weren't going to re-sign him next year, so you might as well trade him for what his contract is worth because he's getting a lot of money this season, $21 million cap hit for the Commanders, and good for the Commanders. But there's no reason the Texans can't make this work. Am I wrong? So just looking at this deal, I really do believe it's a good idea for the Texans to do this. I'm curious as to what the fans think. I can say all the things I want to say. I can predict all the things I want to predict. Shaq Mason's gone. Stephon Diggs is gone. Now Tunsil's gone. What's next? I don't know. I didn't expect the Texans to trade for Christian Kirk, but it was a good idea. Now, the interior offensive line has work to do. I'm fine with Titus Howard moving the left tackle. You get 2 guards. You have Jarrett Patterson still play the center position. Juice Scruggs can back him up. That'll be fine. Right tackle is the biggest hole right now. I don't mind left tackle. Unless you're going to have Titus Howard play the guard, which I really don't know why you do that. But here's the thing. Right tackle's a hole. Blake Fisher, I don't know. But if you draft the guy, that could work. There's a couple of good options in the draft. You have middle round picks now that you can kind of package in a deal to trade up, whether that's for Emeka Egbuka. I would love Egbuka, but it's unlikely now with getting Berrios in the slot. I feel like that was just some depth. They're not going to re-sign Robert Woods. And I know Berrios isn't probably going to play much, but he's still a good wide receiver. He's a good tool threat to move around in a lot of motion. It's definitely interesting to see what Nick Caley can draw up offensively for the Texans. I mean, there's still a lot of players that need contract extensions. You need to find a secondary running back to Joe Mixon. You need some more defensive line depth. Sheldon Rankins got signed. Braxton Berrios. We'll talk about those next video, but I kind of broke it down. I definitely tore into Tunsil a little bit, but I also I like the way this is going for the future. Stroud, yes, he was sacked a lot last year. Yes, you need a hole. You have the hole to fill now, but I think the contract speaks for itself, and when you have a guy making that much money, when you can clear a good $15-20 million in cap, I think it's a lot better to do that and just eat what you can with Titus or Tunsil and just move on from him, figure it out, and go from there. But thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all the support on the recent videos. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let me know some ideas of what the Texans might do either in the draft and free agency. I love to hear everyone's predictions. Definitely ask me some questions on why I think this. I mean, I'll go back and forth in the comments all day. But until next time, we got some more videos to catch out in the future. Sheldon Rankins, go watch it. Braxton Berrios, go watch it. The Texans are going to be on a tear. So until next time, I'm Mike Zanetti. We'll catch you in the next video.